All right, let's have a look at passage 4, questions 13 to 16. This passage talks about America's teenagers, America's adolescents, and how they're not doing well. Then the author tries to explore what are the reasons that they're not doing well, right? So the author quotes two psychologists, psychoanalysts, Erik Erikson and later on Freud, to explore the reasons as to why they are not doing well. Okay, so for instance, Erikson said that the danger for them was diffusion when they needed identity, right? So there were a lot of contradictions, conflicts that they were facing. Okay, then this it said that these conflicts can actually make them depressed, right? Can also result in psychosomatic illnesses. This was Erickson's view, right? This is what he surmised from his work with patients in the hospital. Later on, he talked about how what will happen when the world becomes more globalized, when there is a technological revolution. So he talked about this in the 1950s. So the author says that what he talked about in the 1950s now appears to be very prophetic, as if it's coming to be true. Then there's an example of a person B given to us where she's confused about her identity. She or he is, no, she's confused about her identity. I don't know the pronoun that she uses. Then we talk about how identity politics also comes into the equation. Okay, how it comes into the equation when we talk about America's teenagers. Then we give the views of Freud. That Freud talked about how it was a decisive time for teenagers, right? And how this is what separated them. Adolescence is what separated them from previous generations. And or if those issues were perhaps not addressed, then on the other side of the adolescence, a person could be psychiatrically ill. So these are the issues that are discussed in this passage broadly. That America's teenagers are not doing well, then exploring some reasons behind it, and giving the views of two psychoanalysts, Erikson and Freud. Question 16. According to the passage, American adolescents dash are stifled by a lack of choices in choosing particular identities. But I remember reading that they have a lot of choice in fact. So, questionable. Are strongly bound by their traditions and cultures? Are they? Again, I think I rather read that their identity is pretty unstable because it does not accrue from cultural sensibilities. I read this for a previous question also. I went back to this area. So questionable. Face a lot of criticism unnecessarily. Is this mentioned in the passage? We'll check. Are not a divisive or decisive issue that is likely to have serious consequences. So, adolescents do not present any divisive or decisive issues that is likely to have serious consequences. So, these two I'll really have to check from the passage. Let's have a look. So, we talk about adolescents right from the beginning. Their characteristics, in fact, are given in the beginning. That's why I'm going to the first paragraph. We talk about the fact that we seem to have forgotten that adolescents are lightning rods for the zeitgeist. Lightning rods basically refers to people or things that face a lot of criticism, okay, that face a lot of unnecessary criticism to distract from the real issue, to distract from the real issue. So, we can see that unnecessary criticism that is given. Now let's talk about whether their issue is a divisive or decisive issue or not. They live at the fault lines of a culture. Fault lines. A fault line is something that divides. Okay. Something that divides and something that has serious consequences. Divides and has serious consequences. A term that I've read related to various political decisions, policies, that okay, it exposed fault lines in the discussions, fault lines in the policy itself. So it divides and has serious consequences. That means their issues, and their characteristics, so to say, they do divide and they do have serious consequences. So we can't say that D is correct, but we can see that they do face unnecessary criticism. And based on that, I will So based on that, I will reject D because this is false. I just saw the opposite of it, and I will accept C because this is true, right? So C is the answer. This essentially became a vocabulary question. You did need to know the meaning of lightning rod and fault lines, right? So essentially a vocabulary question.